Vusi. So thank you very much, Vusi, for joining us. And I think the context of this conversation is very important because earlier this month, the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services, Mr. Edward Kieswetter, committed the organization to promoting the use of historically marginalized official languages in tax and customs environments. And he did this at the launch of this quite innovative publication called the SARS Multilingual Tax Terminology publication, which contains hundreds of terms in all official languages that are related to tax and customs issues. So namhlanje ke Vusi sabe sithetha ngale publication and siyavuya ke apha ilapha uba uze wazosijoyina. Thank you very much for availing yourself. So can you just give us an overview of what this project is? I think in the press release it said around 450 terms have been translated into all of the official languages. Tell us more, please.
Ndiyavuya kakhulu Sisanda nabanye abaphulaphuleki. Actually, this work, the SARS language service, let me start there, was established in 2016. So, but SARS passed its own language policy way back in 2015. So when I came in from being a provincial manager for the Pan-South African Language Board in the Free State. Well, I think we, as language practitioners, we tend to do a lot of things and then we get bored and then we want to explore, new ventures. Then I saw this as a good challenge. And then I came and joined SARS, mainly to head the language service and to establish everything from scratch. So it was natural then for me to say, since SARS has never had language practitioners or translators for that matter, and immediately I could tell that we are dealing with a highly technical corpus or information. And so much so that we spend most of our time coining in these new terms, because in as much as we would want to ask other experts, but remember, our languages are still developing. So, ufumanisa ukuba hey ikhona ingxaki esidibana nayo mhlambi ilizwe igama elithile uthi into ethile namhlanje kodwa kwiveki ezayo seyenye into ke ngoku kumoshe ke nokugqila ke ukuba uya kwi-branches zethu zase-SARS uqonda ukuba thina as language practitioners maybe we come from that technical view, we consult dictionaries, we do our research and we say tax compliance is this. But when you go to the branches, you find that that's not necessarily what they are saying tax compliance is. So that I think that is where now we started recording, all these difficult things. Because remember now, if SARS has a media release, that media release needs to be out in the SARS official languages that are adopted in the SARS language policy. So now it became imperative that for the sake of consistency, let us record these terms in all these different languages and then start that process in 2016. So it started in 2016, culminating in 2020, but due to COVID, obviously, there were some difficulties in finalizing it. So yeah, that is more or less in a nutshell how this thing came about, that we collect about 450 terms so that within SARS itself. I don't know whether that gives you a picture.
Yes, it does. And I think I'll come back to the publication because I think I certainly am interested to hear of this language service unit that SARS has. You would think as a tax entity, I mean, you're not really interested in matters of language, but why did you deem it important as the revenue service to establish a language unit? You've mentioned the inconsistencies internally. How does this unit help the public? What kind of benefit is it to the ordinary taxpayer like me?
Yeah, you see, I think we at SARS, we have 9 strategic objectives. And the language service is just addressing 2 of them. Not that the others are not important, but the first one is to provide clarity and certainty to taxpayers and traders about their tax obligations. So now, obviously, if you want to provide that clarity and certainty, obviously you must do it in a language that the people understand. Fortunately for us at SARS, we are national, and by national meaning that we have branches all over the country or in the regions. For that matter, if you were to go to our branch in Tata or Gqeberha, you would certainly find our frontline staff. Obviously, they would help you in English, but if you were to struggle because of this language policy, they know that now you please do assist this person in a language that they understand. So we are just putting effect to the strategic objective of providing clarity and certainty to taxpayers and traders about their tax obligation. And I think the second one, where this whole thing is based on, is the second strategic objective that talks about to make it easy for taxpayers and traders to comply with their obligations. I think as soon as people understand, not for the just blind compliance, as soon as they understand the why in their language, iba lula ke lonto yokuba umuntu aqonda oh lento into ethile kufuneka ndiyibhatele ngolu hlobo utheni funeka ndiyibhatele ukuba funeka ndiyibhatele kakade. So I think we were trying to address practically all these issues that confront general taxpayers, because honestly speaking, tax is intimidating, even for myself. It is intimidating.
That's interesting to hear.
Definitely, because I think the mistake that most people do, they tend to think that when you work for SARS, it is given that you are a tax specialist. Kanti SARS is very wide. We have abantu IT, like I'm in communication. So I've never worked at a branch anyway. And you've got abantu, obviously, who are tax specialists, others are auditors. We've got a lot of careers within the organization. So it became a very fascinating thing. How do we marry what we are saying as language practitioners, maybe here, and then with exactly what is said by our frontline staff at the branches? And I think then it goes back to, as a language practitioner, the challenges that we face. I'll make a simple example. We are supposed to talk about maybe develop a signage that says right of admission reserved. And I think we as language practitioners get irritated a lot when the profession is not taken seriously by whoever, maybe private companies or government entities, because it is very easy for them to look at this thing and say right of admission reserved, and go out and say and ask maybe the mama who is a cleaner there, or maybe somebody who is a factotum there, to say right of admission reserved. Ithini right of admission reserved, and then lo mama shem aphendule naye athi akungeni, and then ibhalwe ke nalo hlobo izawubhalwa ibhalwa nje ngoba khathala kaloku these are our languages. Anyone can just come in and do whatever. So umuntu abhale mhlawumbe kaSotho akiwa ungolwe mo right of admission reserved hahukeni. Lonto, I respect ukuthi lo mama is a Sesotho language speaker, but at the same time, the person is not a professional, is not a language practitioner. So they're not able to really get into it, because now you're going to have spent money, you have these beautiful signs in all your companies saying akungeni. Whereas right of admission does not necessarily say that. Then, because what are you going to say when another signage says no entry? Are you still going to say akungeni? You see? So such an example. So we had to go to our branches and say, that is it. Right of admission reserved is not necessarily simplistic as no entry akungena. It means asebohle bana letokelo ya ukena, asingabo bonke abanelungelo longena. Uyayibona? So ngumzekelo onjalo into besiqhuba ngazo ukuba babaqonda ukuba hayi thina siqhela ukuthi ewe sisi mhlawumbe uqhela ukuthi kodwa noko ayichanekanga loo nto, funeka ibe ngolu hlobo. So there was that nice friction kodwa ibe khona, kodwa eventually they had to come and respect that language is dynamic, and you have specialists. In as much as we can all be language speakers, but there are translators, because I fight all the time to say, just because you are a translator does not make you an interpreter. And in this environment, people think that because you are a translator, therefore you are an interpreter. If unento ethile kuthiwa khawuze uthetha isiXhosa, yiza Sisanda, izotolika. And I would say, but do you really get the fact that even in interpreting, we have consecutive interpreting, we have simultaneous interpreting, and you don't have time to consult as with regards to translation, where you will consult dictionaries or perhaps consult your colleagues. So that was the most interesting and exhausting part.
And listening to you, Vusi, I think into that strikes me is something that Mr. Umnumzana Kisveta said during the launch about how this task of creating this multilingual publication of these terms was not just, it was about providing clarity and certainty, but the ends relate to promoting social justice and fundamental human rights through language, which we know is a key component of that. So I think in this detailed explanation that you've given, it really highlights how the thought that has gone into this hasn't just been about taking terms and creating a glossary for the sake of it, but it has been around making text language accessible so that the social justice imperatives are met. Now, let's talk about the practical aspect of this publication. It's all good and well that you have compiled it. Is there a way for Tina as the public to access it, maybe online, or if people who maybe teach topics related to text can use it as a resource? Tell us about how we can actually get it into our hands, or soft copies of it.
Fortunately, this publication is available on the SARS website, www.sars.gov.za. So it is available. So for anyone, is really encouraged to go and download it for himself or herself. So it is available. But further to that, we have decided, we have published a lot of copies, I must say, maybe 1,000 copies, because we really want to distribute this booklet. We are going to start with the SABC radio stations, indigenous radio stations, not just courier these 10 books, to the radio stations, but we want to physically go there, meet the editorial team. These are the news readers, and then sit with them down and then make them, acquaint them with these terms, and then so that they can also, ask whatever questions of clarity that they need, or who knows, they may be our future collaborators, they themselves, So we're looking at the SABC, indigenous radio stations, so we'll be visiting those before the end of this year. Not only SABC radio stations, we've also targeted community radio stations and regional radio. We really want to go to the ground, And then we've also targeted universities. Obviously, we look at African languages departments. We want to visit those. We want to make those booklets available to them. And then obviously, we'll be focusing on maybe African languages department or those that are dealing with, who are teaching language practice in general. And then, we will also be distributing this to, obviously, all our other stakeholders within the text environment.
I'm really glad to hear about how you are really going to be publicizing this work. So all of the best with that. But it has been about a month since the launch of the publication. Abantu bathini, are you seeing people downloading it? Have you had any feedback?
In fact, most organizations or entities or institutions, it's very easy to compile your own terminology right there in your corner, the 4 or 5 of you, and then you agree. But what was important for us was to compile the list of 450 is actually has been whittled from something like 800 terms because we had to select which term. So that's why we're calling this version volume 1. We're busy with volume 2 as we speak.
Okay.
Yes. So now, what we wanted to get to. Oh, somebody's distracting me in the office here. Can you repeat the question?
So the question is, Abantu Batini, it's been about a month since the launch. People are obviously downloading it. Are you getting feedback on how it's been received?
Yeah, now I got my thoughts back now. Sorry for that disturbance. It was important that how do we make sure that there is no comeback? Because language is always debatable.
Of course.
Now, it's debatable, and siyayazi sonke ngasiXhosa, kunento saziXhosa ugqitha mna. It's always the case. But then what we did was to consult the Pan South African Language Board. These are the NLBs, all the NLBs, NLBs, Xhosa, Sesotho, Shivenda, all the languages. These are the experts, because there was a danger that we could come up with a term in this book and say compliance in Sesotho, and somebody comes in and say, no, I'm speaking Sesotho, it's not Boikobelo, it's something else, and then, but that is why we needed the rubber stamp and the, verification by the national language bodies of these official languages, which was very important. I'm saying this because when people are downloading this booklet, we are beginning to find some other people who are challenging maybe a certain term, and we are very open to that. And that is what we want, actually, to say, but this is not it. It's supposed to be this. But it's so nice now to say, well, we hear you, but this was the isiXhosa NLB is the one that is really ratified that term. So we get those. So and it is nice to get those debates. But we have not, like I said, we have not gone to the ground and publicized it so much. Is those steps, that issue is going to start, I think, next month. Then as we do the distribution to all the entities.
Okay. No, I think we definitely will want a conversation to hear how the public is receiving it, but also to hear, because the conversation around the debates on the translation will certainly be of interest to us who are language activists, and how you resolved that, because that is a feat in itself. But I think in the interest of time, Vusi, I just have one last question for you. And what are some of the future initiatives that you, as the Language Services Unit at SARS, have? You've already mentioned there's a volume 2 in the works. Anything else that you are doing that we can look forward to as the public to help us access text-related information in our languages?
I talked about community radio stations. Not many people are aware that the media releases at SARS are translated. And I would want these radio stations, small radio stations, to be aware of that and look at the media, because media release, we talk about things that are happening now, current issues, and we have current terms that we are using there that may not necessarily be on volume 1. And the general public then would be, we want feedback. We appreciate feedback. It would be nice for them when they do their own news bulletins, you know, and then to look at, okay, there's a statement. What did they say in Xitsonga? What did they say in Sepedi? What did they say in Afrikaans? What did they say in isiZulu, in Sesotho, and so on? I think that is where we want to go, honestly. So we would want people to really be in touch with us and give us feedback.
That sounds really exciting. Vusi, thank you so much for your time today. And we do look forward to following the work that you as a unit are doing in SARS. It's really meaningful work. I particularly am excited as a person in higher education at the prospect of this coming to us, because I mean, it could result in multilingual textbooks, right? In a field that has really struggled for years. So this is a really great feat, and we appreciate the work that has been done.
Sisanda, ndiyabulela kakhulu. I think my colleagues would kill me, but I think the other passionate thing that we do during the month of September, we dedicate the whole month. There are certain branches where our studies have revealed that they have a lot of deaf taxpayers. So we do avail South African Sign Language interpreters to about 8, if not 10 branches during the month of September, so that they can go and then they have accredited South African Sign Language interpreters who can assist them with their text. So it's one of the projects that we are doing annually. So no, it is really encouraging. I think at the end of the day, Sisanda, it's about passion. If you have passion for a language, don't just do it because you have to do it, but do it because you and you want to see practical results on the ground.
Kubulela thina Vusi ngexesha lakho namhlanje, umsebenzi wenu mhle uyancomeka kakhulu. May you grow from strength to strength as a unit. Thank you very much.
Ndiyabulela Sisanda, nani nje sininqwenelela konke okuhle. Camagu.
Enkosi.